Hello, welcome to another wonderful day. This is The Desk, and of course, on The Desk, we will be looking at very, very topical issues. What we're making round, the stories making round on the national dailies today, those stories are worth talking about, and we will be discussing some right on the desk today. As a matter of fact, a couple of heated stories on the national dailies today. The resignation of the minister is right there, and of course Natasha has resumed. Is everything still going to be the same, or the story will change a little bit? Okay, we also look at that and a couple of other issues. The ban for Nigerians abroad who have cases. We'll also look at that and a couple of other issues. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo, and of course I have two gentlemen joining me on the program this evening, and of course we'll also have someone join us via the phone line, but then let's go on a quick break. After this break we'll return, and of course we'll look at these issues, and I will tell you who my guests are on the program this evening. Stay with us. The Desk returns after this break. Welcome back from that break. On the desk this evening, like I said, I have two gentlemen that will be discussing the issues on the national dailies with me today. And of course, someone will also join us via the phone line. To my right, let me begin from my right. Of course, I have Uyi Agbomofuegbe. It's good to have you join us on the desk this evening.
Thank you, Ramsey.
Well, you look sharp.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming. All right, we also have Samuel Odi to my left here, and of course, He's a journalist and he's also joining us on the desk this evening. It's good to have you join us on the desk, Samuel.
It's a great pleasure to be here to, talk about matters that really matter.
Matters that really matter, of course.
Yes.
These are serious matters. Let me start from you, Odi. Were you shocked to hear that Uche Nnaji resigned as a minister? Because it is all about certificate scandal, and some persons were of the opinion that, hey, come on, this is not the first person having such an issue, and for that reason he would have stayed put to see the end of it. But people are different. What do you think about his resignation?
Oh, like you rightly mentioned, the issues about certificate forgery is no longer news here in Nigeria, shamefully, because we are not supposed to be having conversations like this. Even if you're having conversations like this, let it be with people that are not public figures, not with people that are holding key positions. Now, talking about the fact that he resigned, I think it's best that he resigned, though even if he has issues with his results and certificates, he's not that young. Maybe growing up he had concerns, he couldn't finish school. But the fact that he has attained a certain level politically, I think he was supposed to, if this issue, if not being alleged, or basically it's being alleged now, but if not being confirmed, he's meant to go back to school and then sort out whatever challenges he had during his younger days as a student in school. But on the other note, this country has come so far that we'll be having, appointments given to the people that we don't have a proper background checks about their educational background, based on the fact that this is embarrassing to the entire nation. For even if it's being rumored around and it's being alleged, informations like this are not meant to be going to the international communities, based on the fact that this said individual that's talking about Mr. Uche Nnaji is the current past minister of the science and tech ministry. So it's just a whole lot that we're hearing this, and it's just so shocking based on the fact that we're seeing innovations on a rapid base happening globally, and here back home we're suffering with not being sure if the person that they put in charge of this entire ministry is even certified to be in that ministry in the first place. So it's just so disheartening to have conversations like this.
All right, it's so disheartening to have conversations like this. Now, let me get to Uyi. As a matter of fact, this is not the first time we're hearing of cases of forgery. As we speak, even the federal government is setting up, is working with a consultancy firm now to even carry out screening for civil servants. Now, we're having this happen. The step that Nnaji has taken, some persons are faulting it. And other persons are saying, well, it's honorable to leave instead of the usual dragging on your own pride. Now, what do you think about this whole scenario?
It's quite straightforward. I mean, Sam already established that narrative a while ago, right? First of all, he has done the honorable thing by resigning. So that lessens the pain. I didn't say it answers the question or solves the whole problem. But ultimately, we have to look at closure. You must have closure. Closure would mean, for example, that this whole thing runs to a logical conclusion. The man has said vehemently over a long stretch of time that his credentials were not forged. But of course, the barrage of evidence to the contrary is overwhelming. Whether you're talking about the information coming out from University of Nigeria, Nsukka in Enugu State, or you're talking about the information even put out there in public by the government of Enugu State. I mean, it's all just very dark. For a man like that, given how far he has come career-wise and the sensitive role he has played up until yesterday when he turned in his resignation, it's only common sense that he should resign. But that brings us to the next issue. What happens following resignation like this? Some people will say, well, there ought to be prosecution, that the law enforcement agencies ought to look into all of this, get to the very bottom of it, resolve it, and blah, blah, blah. Others say, well, the man has left to say, let's move on with our lives. After all, Nigeria has many more pressing problems to attend to than spending our time, money, and energy pursuing one man in a country where, according to Senator Akpabio, you have at least 33 million people dealing with acute hunger. So it's a portfolio of problems you're dealing with beyond this immediate one. But Sam also raised, he highlighted a very important point when he said, the world is evolving rapidly in terms of science and technology. So when you have this kind of conversation, is obviously indicative of a very painful setback. We should be talking about science, technology, engineering, and math at this time, right? Where we're also trying to think like the way the entire globe is thinking right now in terms of innovation and what have you. Incidentally, Ramsey, it's sad to also note on this program that it is a ministry like the one that Mr. Nnaji led up until yesterday that should be spearheading this conversation right now. But again, as we know, I think it's the permanent secretary in that ministry that will hold forth until a substantive minister is appointed, or maybe the minister of state, as the case may be. I'm not so sure of the protocol. But long and short of the story is resignation is one thing. But how do we continue to make sure that due diligence is done prior to people being nominated and their names sent to Senate for screening and all of that? Because mind you, on the final notes, this also has to do with image problem. Image problem for Mr. Nnaji, image problem for President Bola Tinubu as an individual, as the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria. Image problem for his government, because people are going to ask, how much did you know about the man before you appointed him? Of course, people can also argue and say the president does not need to or did not need to know everything about him. But whose responsibility is it to do the background checks? Because in this same country, former governor of Kaduna State, El-Rufai, was not screened, or at least he was not allowed to be screened at the Senate because they said there had been damning security reports against him. Who did that report? Couldn't we have also deployed such an amount of resources into doing background checks for everybody nominated to be appointed as an aide of the president? These are very important issues we need to look at going forward. Like I also mentioned on Global Morning earlier today, Sam also said that he's not the first person, right? But that 1 million people have done the wrong thing over a 100-year period doesn't make it right. We saw the Salisu Buhari issue in this country, young Speaker of the House of Representatives. We saw that. We saw the issue of Kemi Adeosun, which became controversial in September of 2018, and the lady had to resign. Minister of Finance, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, and all of that. So, again, will this be the last of many scandals, or is it just going to be an episode in the series?
Right. Is it going to be an episode in a series, or this is going to be the last? Now, something striking while we were speaking. Remember, before you can become a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you need to undergo a screening by the Senate. Now, a lot of people are saying, some Nigerians are of the opinion that, well, as it is right now, how did we escape the Senate? Who did the screening? How was the screening done? So now, in the actual sense of it, remember, the president just accepted the resignation without wasting time, without asking questions, because an image is at stake there. His own image and the image of the person that brought him to the seat. Now, what would you say about the screenings that happens at the Senate before appointments are given to these office holders?
You know, talking about screening, let's just digress for a little bit. When the current Minister of Works, that's talking about Dave Umahi, was about to be screened and get his appointment as a Minister for Works, I was watching the program, I was watching the Senate at the time, and then they're like, no, this one our person. That was what they said, and then we know him, you can just take a bow and go back to your seat. Maybe the same thing happened in the situation of Uche. There's a whole lot. There's a lot of factors. There's a godfatherism factor that can be played. Maybe someone just took him there. I was like, no, this is my person. Handing this appointment, and probably you just brought out documents and they didn't do proper scrutiny of, okay, did this document, did the stamp match what this universities are giving? You know, if all of these things are being properly checked, if the Senate are actually doing their job properly, then issues like this wouldn't be coming out in public spaces for individuals like us to sit and be deliberating on. So I think the Senate and every other body in charge, also in the ministries, it's not when issues like this happen, that is when they will now start looking for damage control, looking for a consultancy firm that would come and then start checking on people's certification and all of that. I think all of this needs to be done way before, these individuals get into those occupy those seats. starting from the janitor that is there. If you're a cleaner, let's know that the basic that is required is your WAEC certificates. Provide that. Let's be sure this is it. And then that's how the trajectory should be. But now, with the whole scenario going on in the system, the system, like the Bible would always say, when the foundation is faulty, what can the righteous do? There's just a whole lot of faultiness that have gone down within the system. That's why we are seated here having this conversation instead of having a different conversation on how to move the country forward, or how this sector is doing better than the other sector and what can be done differently. So there's just a whole lot going on then that needs to be tackled. And then talking about the president now, obviously he is going to accept the resignation wholeheartedly, because he wouldn't want anything to stain his administration. And again, the election is around the corner. It might be the opposition now, on the other hand, that is still trying to look for some loophole that they would capitalize on ahead of the 2027 election, given the fact that a whole lot of states and ministers have endorsed the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu ahead of 2027. So there's just a whole lot that is going on within this, not just this certificate concern, but there's just a whole lot that individuals are looking towards to, capitalize on and, have an advantage for themselves around the polls come 2027.
That's very vital. You say something very important. Now, the issue of the Senate and screening, a lot of people will be shifting blames now, and you know how it happens in this country. Whatever happens anywhere, people want to save their heads. That's it. Everybody wants to save their heads. Now, it has happened. Like we've been singing it. This is not the first time we are having this kind of situation. Now, as it is, don't you think at least, I don't know, I don't want to say punishment, but then, even if it is a query, do you think the people who did the screening deserve a query, and is it possible, and how can that be done?
Okay, first off, Ramsey, there's a generic way to look at these things. Again, that is basically saying that people must be held accountable. If you and I run a company, let's say we are co-founders, we hire Samuel Udi to say, we are consulting, we are outsourcing our cleaning to your company. Help us get cleaners. We need 16 cleaners, right? If those cleaners do not understand their job description, it's on him. If those cleaners perform below par, it's on him, because he's the one we have a contract with. We must always cycle back to the terms in that contract, all right, to be able to measure the performance of the persons he has deployed to our organization. So, like you mentioned, who were those who had before now been saddled with the responsibility of doing background checks, or not just only Chief Nanji, but the other nominees at that time? For example, it was somebody that raised the issue of how that Dr. Bosu Tijani, the Minister for Digital Economy and Innovation, had posted some things on Twitter, all right, that were not very palatable at the time. And senators grilled him over that issue for several hours. So whose position or whose responsibility was it, all right, to have found out what exactly, because we understand that part of the protocol when you nominate ministers and, of course, service chiefs and the likes, is that you do security checks. So the DSS has a role to play in that, maybe the police as well. And then, of course, the Senate, the National Assembly is an institution. So it shouldn't come as a surprise if the National Assembly, whether it's within its mandate or not, has maybe a committee or some sort of framework or instrumentality by which it is able to also do its own background checks to determine exactly who has done well, who has done worth. Sometimes what they also look at is the track record of the person. For example, you said the person actually headed a company, let's say somewhere outside of Africa. The person has established a business that has been successful for 20 years and counting and things like that. That's one factor, because we have to get down to the roots so we don't just keep scratching the surface. Another factor is ask yourself, how do people get nominated in the first instance? Do you apply to be a minister in Nigeria? No, you apply to work at Google TV. I did, we all did. But do you apply to be a minister in Nigeria? The answer is capital letter no.
You're handpicked.
So the president is not God, he's a human being.